The desert sun was setting behind the mountains when Rosa held her little boy's hand tight. They stood next to a fresh grave in the small cemetery of Copper Ridge, Arizona. Her husband of 8 years was now buried under the red dirt, and she couldn't believe it was real. "Mama, when is Papa coming home?" 6-year-old Diego asked for the 10th time that day. His small voice broke Rosa's heart all over again. "Papa isn't coming home, mi amor," she whispered, trying not to cry in front of him. "Remember what we talked about? Papa is with the angels now." Diego kicked at a small rock. "I don't like angels. I want Papa." Rosa didn't know what to say. How do you explain death to a 6-year-old when you can barely understand it yourself? 3 days ago, her husband Carlos was laughing over breakfast, complaining about the broken truck he had to fix at the garage. He was supposed to come home that evening with groceries and maybe some ice cream for Diego. Instead, the sheriff came to her door at 9 o'clock that night. The truck had gone off the mountain road during a sudden storm. Carlos died instantly, they said. At least he didn't suffer. But Rosa was suffering enough for both of them. Now, as the last people from the funeral walked away, Rosa felt more alone than ever. Her mother lived 6 hours away in Phoenix. Her sister had her own problems. The garage where Carlos worked said they would help her for a few weeks, but after that, she was on her own. She had maybe $2,000 in the bank and a 6-year-old son who didn't understand why his world had suddenly turned upside down. As Rosa wiped her eyes, she noticed someone watching them from across the cemetery. An older man with long gray hair stood by a big oak tree. He wore simple clothes, jeans, and a worn shirt, but something about him seemed different. His dark eyes were kind but serious, like someone who had seen his own share of pain. When their eyes met, the man touched his hand to his heart, and then to his forehead. It was some kind of respectful greeting. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the desert like he had never been there at all. "Mama, who was that man?" Diego asked, tugging on her black dress. "I don't know, baby," Rosa said, still looking at the spot where the stranger had stood. Something about him felt familiar, even though she was sure they had never met. The drive home felt like the longest 5 minutes of her life. Their small house looked empty and sad without Carlos's work truck in the driveway. Inside, everything reminded her of him. His coffee cup still sat on the kitchen counter. His work boots were still by the back door, covered in dust and motor oil. That night, Diego couldn't sleep. He kept coming to Rosa's room saying he heard noises or had bad dreams. Finally, she let him crawl into bed with her. They both lay there in the dark, listening to the desert wind blow through the old windows. "Mama," Diego whispered. "Are you going to die too?" Rosa's chest felt tight. "No, baby. I'm not going anywhere. I promise." But even as she said it, Rosa wondered how she was going to keep that promise. She had worked at the local diner before Diego was born, but they had laid her off 2 years ago when business got slow. Carlos made enough money at the garage to pay the bills, but just barely. Now she had to find work, pay rent, buy food, and take care of a heartbroken little boy who was starting to act out at school. Yesterday, his teacher called to say Diego had pushed another kid during recess. This morning, he refused to get dressed and threw his cereal bowl on the floor. Carlos had always been the one who could calm Diego down. He would take him outside to throw a baseball or work on simple repairs around the house. "Boys need to keep their hands busy," Carlos would say with a laugh. But Carlos was gone, and Rosa didn't know the first thing about fixing trucks or throwing baseballs. She was a good mother, but she was only one person trying to do the job of 2. The next few days were a blur of phone calls and paperwork. The insurance company wanted forms. The bank wanted to know about the mortgage. Carlos's boss at the garage, Mr. Thompson, was kind but honest. "I can give you his last paycheck and maybe help out for another week or 2, he said when Rosa came to clean out Carlos's locker. "But I can't afford to hire anyone right now, and I know you don't know much about fixing cars." Rosa nodded, trying not to cry. She took Carlos's toolbox and the small radio he listened to while he worked. Diego wanted his father's work gloves, even though they were way too big for his small hands. Walking through the grocery store that evening, Rosa did math in her head. Milk, bread, eggs, rice, beans. The basics. No cookies for Diego, no special treats. Every dollar had to count now. As she reached for a bag of rice, she heard a familiar small voice behind her. "Papa always bought the big bag," Diego said sadly, looking at the small bag in her hands. "I know, baby," Rosa said. But we need to be careful with money now. Diego's bottom lip started to shake, and Rosa knew a meltdown was coming. Right there in the grocery store, her little boy started to cry. Not just tears, but the kind of deep, painful sobs that come from a broken heart. Rosa knelt down and pulled him close, not caring that people were staring. She felt helpless and lost. How was she supposed to be both mother and father? How was she supposed to fix this? That night, after Diego finally fell asleep, Rosa sat at her kitchen table with a calculator and a pile of bills. No matter how she added the numbers, they didn't work out. The rent alone took most of what little money she had left. Food, electricity, water, gas for her old car. It all added up to more than she could afford. She thought about the stranger at the cemetery. Something about his respectful nod had stuck with her. In a world that suddenly felt chaotic and scary, that small gesture of kindness meant something. Rosa didn't know it yet, but that man would soon become the answer to problems she didn't even know how to ask about. Sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places, and sometimes the people who understand your pain the most are the ones who have walked the same hard road. For now, though she was just a young widow trying to figure out how to survive tomorrow, and the day after that, and all the days that would come without the man she had planned to grow old with. 3 weeks after the funeral, Rosa's world felt like it was falling apart piece by piece. Diego had gotten in trouble at school again, this time for yelling at his teacher when she asked him to sit down. The principal, Mrs. Garcia, was understanding but firm. Diego is acting out because he's hurting, she explained as they sat in her office. But we can't let him disrupt the whole class. Maybe he needs to talk to someone? A counselor? Rosa nodded, but her heart sank. Counselors cost money she didn't have. Everything seemed to cost money she didn't have. That morning, Diego had refused to eat breakfast and thrown his backpack across the room when Rosa said it was time for school. She had to physically carry him to the car while he kicked and screamed. The neighbors were starting to stare. "I hate school," Diego had shouted through his tears. "I hate everything. I want my papa." Rosa understood. She wanted Carlos too. She wanted him to come home and help her figure out what to do with their angry, confused little boy. She wanted him to hold her and tell her everything would be okay. But wanting didn't bring people back from the dead. After dropping Diego at school, Rosa drove to the grocery store. She had exactly $43 in her wallet and a list of things they absolutely needed: milk, bread, peanut butter, eggs. She walked through the store like she was solving a puzzle, adding up prices in her head. In the school supplies section, she picked up a cheap notebook for Diego. His teacher had sent home a note saying he needed one for a writing project. As Rosa reached for the notebook, her elbow bumped into a tall display of markers. The whole thing wobbled. "Whoa, careful there," said a deep voice behind her. Rosa turned around and found herself face to face with the man from the cemetery. Up close, she could see he was probably in his 40s, with kind eyes and calloused hands. He was helping 2 girls pick out folders. One looked about 8, the other maybe 10. "I'm so sorry," Rosa said, steadying the display. "I wasn't watching where I was going." "No problem," the man said. "Happens to all of us." One of his daughters, the younger one with long black braids, smiled at Rosa. "I like your earrings," she said shyly. "They're pretty." "Thank you, sweetheart," Rosa said, touching the small silver hoops that had been a gift from Carlos years ago. The older girl was more serious, but she nodded politely. Both girls were well behaved and stayed close to their father while he helped them choose what they needed. "Girls, what do you say we help this lady?" the man asked when he noticed Rosa looking overwhelmed by all the school supplies. "Oh no, that's okay," Rosa started to say, but the younger girl was already picking up markers that had fallen from the display. "Papa always says we help when we can," the girl explained matter-of-factly. Rosa felt tears starting again. These days, any small kindness made her cry. "Thank you," she managed to say. As they cleaned up together, Rosa noticed how the man guided his daughters without raising his voice. When the younger girl got distracted and wandered toward the toy section, he simply said, "Luna, stay close," and she came right back. "You have beautiful daughters," Rosa said as they finished fixing the display. "Thank you," the man said. "They're good girls. They've had to grow up fast these past couple of years." Something in his voice told Rosa he understood about loss. There was a sadness there that felt familiar. "I'm Rosa," she said, extending her hand. Joseph, he replied, shaking it gently. And these are my daughters, Luna and Sky. The girls waved shyly. Rosa noticed they both had their father's serious eyes but sweet smiles. Do you go to Desert Springs Elementary? Rosa asked the girls. Yes, Luna said excitedly. What grade is your kid in? First grade, Rosa said. His name is Diego. I know Diego, Sky said, speaking up for the first time. He sits at my lunch table sometimes. He's really good at drawing trucks. Rosa's heart squeezed. Carlos had always drawn trucks and cars with Diego. Yes, he loves trucks, she said quietly. Joseph seemed to notice the sadness in her voice. Children go through seasons, he said thoughtfully. Sometimes they're stormy seasons, but storms always pass. As they finished shopping and walked toward the checkout lanes together, Rosa found herself wishing the conversation didn't have to end. Joseph had a calm way about him that made her feel less scattered and overwhelmed. At the checkout, Rosa watched her total climb higher and higher. $41.53. She had $43. Her face burned with embarrassment as she started to put back the notebook for Diego. Let me get that, Joseph said quietly, adding the notebook to his own purchases. Oh no, I couldn't, Rosa protested. It's just a notebook, Joseph said simply. Every kid needs supplies for school. Luna and Sky nodded seriously, like helping people buy school supplies was perfectly normal. Outside the store, as they loaded their groceries into their cars, Joseph said something that stayed with Rosa for days. You know, in my culture, we have a saying, he told her as his girls climbed into his old pickup truck. When the storm breaks the tree, the roots must grow deeper to find new strength. Rosa looked at him, not sure what to say. Your boy is going through his storm season right now, Joseph continued gently. But he's got strong roots. He'll find his way. I hope so, Rosa said. Some days I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. Joseph was quiet for a moment, then said, The best parents are the ones who worry about doing it right. That tells me you're doing better than you think. As they drove away in different directions, Rosa thought about what Joseph had said. Diego was having his storm season. But what about her? Was she having a storm season too, or was this just what her life looked like now? That afternoon when she picked up Diego from school, his teacher pulled her aside again. Diego had a good day today, Mrs. Martinez said, sounding surprised. He helped another student with a math problem and didn't have any outbursts. Rosa was shocked. Really? Really? Maybe whatever you're doing is working. But Rosa hadn't done anything different. The only thing that had changed was her brief encounter with Joseph and his daughters. That night at dinner, Diego was still moody but not as explosive as usual. Mom, he said, picking at his peanut butter sandwich, there's a girl in 3rd grade who said her dad knows my dad. Rosa's heart jumped. What do you mean, honey? She said her dad saw Papa at the place where we buried him, Diego explained. She said her dad thinks Papa was a good man. Rosa realized Diego was talking about Sky, Joseph's daughter. Somehow that small connection, knowing that someone else had noticed and respected Carlos, made her feel less alone. Later that night, after Diego was asleep, Rosa sat on her front porch looking out at the desert. The stars were bright and clear, the way they only get when you're far from big cities. She thought about Joseph's words about storms and roots and growing deeper. Maybe he was right. Maybe this terrible hard time was just a season, and somehow she and Diego would come through it stronger. She didn't know that Joseph was thinking about her too, wondering about the sad young woman trying to raise a heartbroken little boy all by herself. He didn't know that Rosa would soon become the answer to his own family's struggles, or that their chance meeting in the grocery store would change all their lives forever. For now, it was just two single parents trying to figure out how to help their children heal and finding small moments of hope in unexpected places. Rosa never expected to see Joseph again, but life in a small town has a way of bringing people together. 2 weeks after their grocery store meeting, she was rushing to pick up Diego from school when she spotted Joseph's pickup truck in the school parking lot. Diego came running out of the building with a big smile. The first real smile Rosa had seen in weeks. Mom, look what I made, he shouted, waving a paper in the air. It was a drawing of a family, stick figures standing next to a house with a truck in the driveway and a dog in the yard. That's beautiful, baby, Rosa said, but her heart ached. The drawing showed the family Diego wished they still had. Sky helped me with the truck, Diego said proudly. She knows how to draw really good wheels. Rosa looked around and saw Joseph walking toward them with his daughters. Luna was carrying a colorful painting and Sky had a small trophy in her hands. "Congratulations," Rosa said to Sky. "What did you win?" "Reading contest," Sky said with a shy smile. "I read 15 books this month." "Wow, that's amazing," Rosa said. She noticed how both girls stayed close to their father but seemed confident and happy. "Diego told me you helped him with his drawing," Rosa said to Sky. "He's really good at drawing," Sky replied. "He just needed help with the round parts." Joseph looked at Diego's picture. "That's a fine truck," he said seriously. "Takes skill to get the proportions right." Diego beamed at the compliment. Rosa watched as Joseph knelt down to Diego's level to look more closely at the drawing. No adult had paid Diego that kind of focused attention since Carlos died. "Would you like to see our horses?" Luna asked suddenly, tugging on Diego's shirt. "Papa takes us to visit them every Saturday." "Horses?" Diego's eyes went wide. He had always loved animals, but had never seen a horse up close. Joseph looked at Rosa. "There's a ranch about 20 minutes from here where I volunteer sometimes. They have therapy horses for kids. Luna and Sky like to help brush them and feed them carrots." "Can we go, Mom? Please?" Diego asked, bouncing on his toes. Rosa hesitated. She barely knew Joseph, and Diego had been through so much already. What if he got attached and then disappointed again? Joseph seemed to understand her worry. "Why don't you think about it?" he said gently. "If you decide you'd like to come, we'll be there Saturday morning around 10. No pressure either way." That evening, Diego talked non-stop about horses and Sky and Luna. It was the most animated Rosa had seen him since before the accident. "Mom, did you know horses can live to be 30 years old?" Diego asked over dinner. "And they remember people even if they don't see them for a long time." "Sky told me that." Rosa smiled. "Sky knows a lot about horses." "She knows a lot about everything," Diego said. "And her dad is really tall. He's nice too. Not like me nice, but really nice." Rosa knew what Diego meant. Some adults talked down to kids or acted fake friendly. Joseph treated children like they were real people worth listening to. Friday night, Rosa still couldn't decide about the horses. Part of her wanted to give Diego this small happiness, but part of her was scared of depending on other people's kindness. What happened when they got tired of helping? What happened when they moved away or got busy with their own lives? She was still thinking about it Saturday morning when Diego woke up early and came into her room. "Mom, can we please go see the horses today?" he asked, climbing into bed beside her. "I promise I'll be really good. I won't yell or throw things anymore." Rosa's heart broke a little. Diego was trying so hard to be perfect, thinking his behavior was somehow connected to whether good things happened to them. "Diego, listen to me," she said, pulling him close. "Whether we go see horses or not has nothing to do with whether you're good or bad. You're my son and I love you no matter what, okay?" Diego nodded, but she could see he didn't quite believe her yet. At 9:30, Rosa made a decision. "Get dressed," she told Diego. "We're going to see some horses." The drive to the ranch took them through beautiful desert scenery. Rosa had lived in Arizona her whole life, but she rarely left town and had forgotten how stunning the landscape could be. Joseph was waiting for them in the parking area, wearing jeans and boots and a cowboy hat that somehow looked completely natural on him. Luna and Sky ran over to greet Diego like he was an old friend. "I'm glad you came," Joseph said to Rosa. "The girls have been excited all week." The ranch was bigger than Rosa had expected, with several barns and paddocks surrounded by desert mountains. Joseph introduced them to Maria, the ranch owner, who explained how the horses help children work through difficult emotions. "Animals don't judge," Maria said as they walked toward the first paddock. "They just respond to how you treat them. Kids learn a lot about themselves when they work with horses." The first horse they met was a gentle brown mare named Bella. She was enormous to Diego, who barely came up to her shoulder, but she lowered her head so he could pet her nose. "She likes you," Sky said, showing Diego how to hold his hand flat when offering the horse a carrot. "See how her ears are pointed forward? That means she's interested in you." Diego was completely enchanted. He spent the next hour learning how to brush Bella's coat and clean her hooves. Joseph worked quietly beside them, showing Diego the right way to hold the brush and explaining how to read the horse's body language. "Animals can sense when people are sad," Joseph told Diego as they worked. "Bella knows you've been having a hard time. That's why she's being extra gentle with you." Rosa watched from the fence, amazed at the change in her son. For the first time in weeks, Diego looked relaxed and focused. His shoulders weren't tense, and he wasn't looking around anxiously like he usually did. Luna and Sky treated Diego like a little brother, patiently teaching him everything they knew. Rosa noticed how Joseph had raised daughters who were kind and confident without being bossy. After they finished with the horses, Joseph invited Rosa to walk with him while the kids played in a nearby field. "They look happy," Rosa said, watching Diego chase butterflies with the girls. "Kids are amazing," Joseph said. "They heal faster than adults do if we give them the right environment." Rosa looked at him curiously. "You sound like you know something about healing." Joseph was quiet for a moment, watching his daughters. "I lost my wife 2 years ago," he said finally. "Hiking accident up in the mountains. One day we were planning our 10th wedding anniversary, and the next day I was a single father with 2 little girls who didn't understand why their mama wasn't coming home." Rosa felt tears starting. "I'm so sorry." "The first year was the hardest," Joseph continued. "The girls stopped talking much. Luna had nightmares every night. Sky started getting into trouble at school, which wasn't like her at all." "What helped them?" Rosa asked. Joseph smiled slightly. "Time and community, and letting them be sad when they needed to be sad. My grandmother always said that grief is love with nowhere to go. You can't rush it, but you can help it find healthy places to flow." Rosa thought about Diego's angry outbursts and sleepless nights. "Diego's been so angry lately. I don't know how to help him." "Anger is just sadness wearing a disguise," Joseph said gently. "Little boys aren't always taught that it's okay to cry, so the sadness comes out as anger instead." They walked in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the children's laughter and the sound of wind through the desert grass. "Can I ask you something?" Rosa said finally. "Of course. At the cemetery when you saw us, why did you stay?" "Most people just drive by." Joseph considered this. "Because I recognized the look in your eyes," he said. "It was the same look I saw in my own mirror for months after my wife died. Like you were drowning and trying not to let anyone see." Rosa felt understood in a way she hadn't experienced since Carlos died. "Some days I feel like I'm failing Diego completely." "You're not failing," Joseph said firmly. "You're doing the hardest job in the world with half the support you should have. That takes incredible strength." As they walked back toward the children, Joseph said something that would change everything. "You know, in my culture, we believe that families aren't just about blood. Sometimes the people who are meant to be in your life show up when you need them most, even if it's not in the way you expected." Rosa looked at him, not sure what he meant, but sensing it was important. "Your son needs what my daughters have," Joseph continued thoughtfully. "And my daughters need what your son has. Maybe that's not a coincidence." That night, driving home with a tired but happy Diego in the back seat, Rosa thought about Joseph's words. What did Diego have that Luna and Sky needed? What did they have that he needed? She was beginning to understand that this might be about more than just horses and weekend adventures. This might be about healing in ways she hadn't even considered yet. The school carnival arrived in early October, filling the desert evening with the sounds of laughter and carnival music. Rosa had promised Diego they could go, even though money was tighter than ever. She had exactly $20 in her wallet, enough for a few game tickets and maybe some cotton candy. Diego ran ahead toward the bright lights, more excited than Rosa had seen him in months. The past few weekends of visiting the horses with Joseph's family had worked like magic on her son. He was sleeping better, fighting less, and actually smiling again. "Mom, look, there's Sky," Diego called out, waving at Joseph's older daughter, who was working at the ring toss booth with other kids from her class. "Hi, Diego," Sky called back. "Want to try to win a prize?" Rosa looked around for Joseph and spotted him near the cakewalk, holding Luna's hand as she carefully chose which number to stand on. He looked different in the carnival lights, younger somehow and more relaxed than Rosa usually saw him. "Go play some games," Rosa told Diego, handing him $5. "But stay where I can see you, okay?" For the next hour, Rosa watched Diego play games with Luna and Sky like they were old friends. The 3 children moved from booth to booth together, sharing tickets and cheering each other on. Other parents smiled at their obvious friendship. Joseph appeared beside her as they watched the kids try to knock down milk bottles with bean bags. "They make a good team," he said, nodding toward the children. "They really do," Rosa agreed. "Diego hasn't had friends like this since..." Well, since before. Joseph understood. Luna and Sky have been happier these past few weeks than they've been in 2 years, he said. Diego brings out their playful side. They were getting too serious, too grown up, too fast. Rosa watched as Diego helped Luna aim at the milk bottles, showing her how to throw underhand like Carlos had taught him. Sky cheered when Luna finally knocked one down. He's good with them, Rosa observed. Carlos always said Diego had a gentle heart under all that energy. Your husband sounds like he was a wise man. He was, Rosa said softly. He would have loved seeing Diego like this, happy and confident again. They stood in comfortable silence, watching their children navigate the carnival together. Diego was clearly the youngest of the three, but the girls treated him like an equal partner, rather than a little kid they had to babysit. Rosa, Joseph said suddenly, his voice more serious than usual. Can I talk to you about something? Something in his tone made Rosa look at him more closely. Of course, Joseph seemed to be choosing his words carefully. I've been thinking about our kids and about what they need to keep healing. Rosa nodded, waiting for him to continue. Diego has changed since he started spending time with my girls, Joseph said. But they've changed too. Luna hasn't had a nightmare in 3 weeks. Sky is starting to laugh more, to act like a regular 10-year-old instead of a little adult. I've noticed that too, Rosa said. They're all good for each other. Joseph took a deep breath. What I'm about to say might sound crazy, and if it does, just forget I said anything and we'll keep doing what we're doing. Rosa felt her heart start to beat faster. What is it? Joseph looked directly at her. Your son needs a father figure in his life, and my daughters need a mother figure in theirs. We're both struggling to give our kids what they need because we're trying to be 2 parents in 1 person. Rosa stared at him, not sure where this was going. I'm not talking about romance, Joseph said quickly. I'm talking about partnership. A practical arrangement that benefits our children. I don't understand, Rosa said, though part of her was beginning to. Joseph glanced around to make sure no one could hear them, then said the words that would change everything. I think we should get married. Rosa's mouth dropped open. What? Not for love, Joseph said quickly. For our kids. Diego needs a stable father figure who can teach him how to be a man. Luna and Sky need a mother who can help them navigate growing up as girls. We both need help with parenting, with finances, with just making it through each day. Rosa felt dizzy. Joseph, that's insane. People don't just get married for practical reasons anymore. Why not? Joseph asked calmly. My great-grandparents had an arranged marriage. They learned to love each other over 40 years together. My grandmother always said the best marriages are built on respect and shared purpose, not just feelings that might change. Rosa looked at their children, who were now sharing a bag of popcorn and planning their next game, but we barely know each other. We know the important things, Joseph said. We know we're both good parents who put our children first. We know we respect each other and work well together. We know our kids are happier when they're together than when they're apart. Marriage is about more than just raising children, Rosa protested. But even as she said it, she realized that for the past 2 months, her entire life had been about exactly that. Is it? Joseph asked gently. Right now, what do you want more than anything else in the world? Rosa thought about it. For Diego to be happy and healthy and safe. That's what I want for my daughters too, Joseph said. Everything else, love, companionship, personal fulfillment, those are luxuries we can't afford to focus on right now. Our kids need stability more than we need romance. Rosa watched Diego help Sky win a small stuffed animal at the basketball toss. Her son looked confident and capable in a way he hadn't since Carlos died. You're serious about this, she said. Completely serious, Joseph replied. I've been thinking about it for weeks. We're both drowning trying to do everything alone. Together, we could give our kids the stability they need to heal properly. What would people think? Rosa asked. Does it matter what people think if our children are happy and thriving? Rosa considered this. Her mother would have a heart attack. Her sister would say she was crazy. The neighbors would gossip for months. I need time to think about this, she said finally. Of course, Joseph said. I'm not asking for an answer tonight. But Rosa, look at them. Rosa looked at their 3 children who were now trying to win goldfish at the ping-pong ball toss. They looked like siblings, laughing, teasing each other gently, working as a team. They need each other, Joseph continued. And honestly, I think we need each other too. Not romantically, but as partners in the hardest job we'll ever have. Just then, Diego came running over with Luna and Sky close behind. Mom! We won goldfish, Diego announced, holding up a plastic bag with a tiny orange fish swimming inside. We're going to share them, Luna explained. Diego can keep this one at his house and we'll keep the other one at our house, but they're really both of ours together. Rosa looked at Joseph, who raised an eyebrow slightly. Even the children were thinking in terms of shared families and combined resources. That sounds like a good plan, Rosa managed to say. As they walked back to their cars at the end of the evening, Rosa's mind was spinning. Marriage to Joseph? It seemed impossible and practical at the same time. Crazy and sensible. The most logical thing in the world and the most frightening. Mom, Diego said as they drove home, carefully holding his goldfish bowl in his lap. Can Sky and Luna come over for dinner tomorrow? I want to show them my room, and Luna said she'd teach me how to braid friendship bracelets. Rosa looked at her son in the rearview mirror. He looked happier and more settled than he had since before the accident. Whatever Joseph was offering, it was clearly working for Diego. We'll see, baby, she said. We'll see. That night, after Diego was asleep, Rosa sat at her kitchen table staring at the bills she couldn't pay and thinking about Joseph's proposal. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't traditional. But it might be exactly what their broken families needed to become whole again. Rosa didn't tell anyone about Joseph's proposal for 3 days. She carried it around like a secret, turning it over in her mind while she did laundry, cooked dinner, and helped Diego with homework. The more she thought about it, the less crazy it seemed, and that scared her almost as much as the proposal itself. On Thursday evening, her sister Carmen called from Phoenix. How are you holding up? Carmen asked. I keep meaning to come visit, but work has been insane. Rosa almost didn't say anything. But sitting alone in her kitchen after putting Diego to bed, the secret felt too big to keep carrying by herself. Carmen, she said carefully, what would you think if I told you someone asked me to marry them? What? Carmen's voice shot up 3 octaves. Rosa, it's only been 2 months since Carlos died. Who is this person? How long have you known them? It's not what you think, Rosa said quickly. It's not about romance. It's about the kids. She told Carmen about Joseph, about the weekends at the ranch, about how happy Diego had been lately. She tried to explain Joseph's reasoning about practical marriages and shared parenting. Carmen listened in stunned silence, then exploded. Rosa, have you completely lost your mind? You want to marry a complete stranger just because your kid likes his kids? This is insane. He's not a complete stranger, Rosa protested. I've been getting to know him for weeks. Weeks, Carmen shouted. You knew Carlos for 3 years before you married him. And this Joseph person, what do you even know about him? Where does he work? What's his family like? Has he ever been violent? Does he drink? Rosa realized she didn't know the answers to most of those questions. He's gentle with the children. He's never raised his voice or been anything but respectful. Ted Bundy was charming too, Carmen snapped. Rosa, you're vulnerable right now. You're grieving and scared and overwhelmed. This man is taking advantage of that. He's not taking advantage, Rosa said, but Carmen wasn't finished. You need to think about Diego. What happens when this arrangement doesn't work out? What happens when this man gets tired of playing house and kicks you out? Diego has already lost one father figure. Do you really want to set him up for that kind of heartbreak again? Rosa felt her confidence wavering. Carmen was voicing all the fears Rosa had been trying to push down. I haven't said yes yet, Rosa said quietly. Good, don't. Promise me you won't do anything stupid without talking to Mom first. Rosa's mother, Elena, arrived from Phoenix the next morning in a cloud of perfume and disapproval. Carmen had clearly called ahead to warn her. Mija, Elena said, pulling Rosa into a tight hug. Carmen tells me you're thinking about remarrying already. Is this true? Diego was at school, so Rosa made coffee and told her mother everything. Elena listened with growing horror. Absolutely not, Elena said firmly when Rosa finished. This is not how marriages work, Rosa. Marriage is about love, about passion, about building a life together because you can't imagine living apart. That's how your marriage worked, Mom, Rosa said. But look around. Half the marriages that start with passion end in divorce. Maybe practical marriages last longer. Don't be ridiculous, Elena snapped. You loved Carlos with your whole heart. You were happy together. Why would you settle for less than that? Because I'm not 22 anymore, Rosa said, feeling frustrated. I'm a single mother with no money and a heartbroken little boy. I can't afford to wait around for fairy tale romance. Diego needs stability now. Elena stood up and started pacing around Rosa's small kitchen. This is grief talking. You're not thinking clearly. In a year or two, when you've had time to heal, you'll meet someone wonderful and fall in love again. But if you marry this stranger now, you'll ruin that chance. What if I don't meet someone wonderful? Rosa asked. What if I'm alone for the next 20 years trying to raise Diego by myself? What if I can't give him what he needs because I'm only one person? Then you figure it out, Elena said. That's what single mothers do. We figure it out. We don't marry the first man who offers to help. The argument continued for hours. Elena pointed out all the ways the arrangement could go wrong. What if Joseph changed his mind about the no romance rule and expected more than Rosa was willing to give? What if his family didn't accept her? What if he turned out to be controlling or abusive once they were legally tied together? You don't know anything about his culture or his traditions, Elena argued.
What if he expects you to live like an Apache woman from 100 years ago?
What if he wants you to convert to his religion or speak his language? Rosa hadn't thought about any of this. She had been so focused on how happy the children were together that she hadn't considered the complexities of merging two completely different cultural backgrounds. That afternoon, when Diego came home from school, Elena watched carefully as he talked about his day. Sky helped me with my math homework during lunch, Diego said happily, and Luna drew me a picture of a horse for my bedroom wall. That's nice, mijo, Elena said carefully. But you know these girls won't be your sisters, right? They're just friends who might move away or get busy with their own lives. Diego looked confused, but Mom said maybe we could all be a family together. Rosa felt her face burn. She hadn't realized Diego had overheard her phone conversation with Carmen. Diego, go play in your room for a while, Rosa said quickly. After Diego left, Elena turned to Rosa with fire in her eyes. You've already talked to him about this? Rosa, what is wrong with you? That little boy has been through enough without you filling his head with impossible dreams. That evening, after Elena left to drive back to Phoenix, Rosa sat on Diego's bed while he got ready for sleep. Mom, Diego said quietly, are we really going to be a family with Sky and Luna and their dad? Rosa looked at her son's hopeful face and felt her heart break a little. I don't know yet, baby. It's complicated. Because of Grandma Elena? Diego asked. She seemed mad about it. Rosa was amazed at how perceptive 6-year-olds could be. Grandma Elena is worried about us. She wants to make sure we make good decisions. But Sky's dad is nice, Diego said. And they make me happy. Don't you want me to be happy? Of course I do, sweetheart. More than anything. Then why can't we be a family? Rosa didn't have a good answer for that. Over the weekend, more resistance came from unexpected places. At the grocery store, Rosa ran into Mrs. Peterson, an elderly neighbor who had known Carlos. I heard you're spending time with that Indian man and his children, Mrs. Peterson said with obvious disapproval. I hope you're being careful, dear. Those people have different ways of living. At Diego's school, another mother made a comment about Rosa, moving on awfully fast, and wondered aloud if it was appropriate for Diego to be getting attached to another man's children. Even Father Martinez at the church where Carlos was. Buried pulled Rosa aside after Sunday Mass. Understand you're struggling, my child, he said kindly but firmly. But marriage is a sacred bond blessed by God. It should be entered into with love and commitment, not as a business arrangement. By Sunday night, Rosa felt beaten down by everyone else's opinions. Maybe they were right. Maybe she was being foolish and irresponsible. Maybe she was setting Diego up for more heartbreak. But then Diego had another nightmare, the first one in 3 weeks. He woke up crying and calling for his papa, and Rosa spent 2 hours trying to comfort him. I dreamed that Sky and Luna went away. Diego sobbed against her shoulder. I dreamed they forgot about me and found other friends, and I was all alone again. Rosa held her son and thought about Joseph's proposal. Was she considering it because it was the right thing for Diego, or because she was scared and desperate? Was there even a difference? The next morning she called Joseph. I need more time, she said when he answered. Everyone thinks I'm crazy. What do you think? Joseph asked quietly. Rosa looked at Diego, who was listlessly eating cereal and asking when he could see the horses again. I think I don't know what's right anymore, she admitted. That's honest, Joseph said. Take all the time you need. The offer stands, but only if you're completely sure it's what you want. After she hung up, Rosa realized that for the first time since Carlos died, she had a real choice to make about her future. The problem was she had no idea how to make it. 2 days later, everything changed because of a moment that lasted less than 30 seconds. Rosa was picking up Diego from school when she saw him sitting alone on the playground bench, crying. Her heart immediately went into panic mode as she rushed over to him. Diego, what's wrong? Are you hurt? Tommy Martinez said my dad is never coming back, Diego sobbed. He said dead people stay dead forever and I should stop being such a baby about it. Rosa felt rage flash through her. Tommy was 8 years old and should have known better. But she also knew he was just repeating something he'd heard adults say. Still, seeing her son's face crumpled with fresh grief made her want to march straight to Tommy's house and give his parents a piece of her mind. Oh, sweetheart, Rosa said, pulling Diego close. Tommy doesn't understand. He's never lost someone he loves. But he's right, isn't he? Diego asked through his tears. Papa isn't coming back. Not ever. Rosa felt helpless. How do you comfort a child when the thing that's hurting him is absolutely true? No, baby, Papa isn't coming back, she said gently. But that doesn't mean you have to stop missing him or stop talking about him. And it doesn't make you a baby to be sad. Diego cried harder. I want to go home, he whispered. As Rosa helped Diego gather his backpack, she noticed other parents staring. Some looked sympathetic, but others seemed to be whispering to each other. Rosa realized that her son's grief was becoming public entertainment for people who had nothing better to do than gossip about the young widow who couldn't control her emotional child. That evening, Diego had his worst meltdown in weeks. He threw his dinner on the floor, screamed that he hated everything, and locked himself in the bathroom. Rosa sat outside the door listening to her son sob and feeling completely defeated. At 8 o'clock, there was a knock on the front door. Rosa opened it to find Joseph standing on her porch with Luna and Sky beside him. We brought cookies, Luna announced, holding up a plate covered with foil. Sky made them, Luna added proudly. She's really good at baking. Rosa looked at Joseph questioningly. Luna heard Diego was upset at school today, Joseph explained quietly. She insisted we come check on him. That's very sweet, but he's having a really hard time right now, Rosa said. Maybe another day would be better. Where is he? Sky asked, looking around Rosa into the house. In the bathroom. He's not feeling well. Sky and Luna exchanged a look, then Sky stepped forward. Can I talk to him? She asked. Sometimes when I get really sad about my mom, Luna knows what to say to make me feel better. Maybe I can help Diego. Rosa hesitated. Diego was barely manageable when he was like this. The last thing she wanted was for Joseph's well-behaved daughters to see her son at his worst. But Joseph nodded encouragingly. Sometimes kids can reach each other when adults can't, he said. Rosa led them to the bathroom door. Diego was still crying inside, but the sobs were quieter now. Diego? Sky called through the door. It's me, Sky. Luna and I brought you cookies. Go away, Diego said, but his voice was more sad than angry. I don't want to go away, Sky said calmly. When my mom died, I used to lock myself in the closet and cry. My dad would sit outside and wait for me to come out. There was silence from inside the bathroom. The worst part was feeling like I was the only kid in the whole world who didn't have a mom, Sky continued. But then I realized that wasn't true. There are lots of kids like us. We just have to stick together. Rosa heard the bathroom door unlock. Diego opened it slowly, his face red and puffy from crying. Your mom is really dead too? He asked Sky. Yeah, Sky said matter-of-factly. She fell off a mountain and broke her neck. The doctors couldn't fix her. Diego stepped out of the bathroom and looked at Sky with new understanding. My dad crashed his truck in the rain. The policeman said he died right away, so it didn't hurt. That's good, Sky said. I'm glad it didn't hurt. Luna, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. I still dream about Mama sometimes. In my dreams, she comes back and makes us pancakes like she used to. I dream about my papa too, Diego said softly. But then I wake up and remember he's gone. Rosa watched in amazement as her son opened up to Joseph's daughters in a way he hadn't been able to with her. They understood his pain because they had lived through the same thing. Joseph appeared beside Rosa. Why don't we all sit down and have some cookies? He suggested. For the next hour, Rosa watched the three children talk about their lost parents with an honesty and simplicity that adults seemed incapable of. They shared memories, compared their different ways of grieving, and somehow made each other feel less alone. "Sometimes I get really angry at Mama for leaving us," Luna admitted as they sat around Rosa's kitchen table eating Sky's cookies. "I get angry at Papa too," Diego said, looking relieved that someone else felt the same way. "Is that bad?" "Papa says it's normal," Sky answered. "He says when someone dies we feel sad and mad and scared all at the same time." Joseph caught Rosa's eye and nodded toward the living room. They left the children talking and walked into the next room. "They're good for him," Rosa said quietly, watching Diego through the doorway. Her son looked more relaxed than he had all week. "They're good for each other," Joseph corrected. "Diego helps my girls remember how to be kids instead of trying to be little adults all the time." Rosa thought about this. Since Carlos died, she had been so focused on Diego's grief that she hadn't considered how other children might be struggling with similar losses. "Joseph," she said suddenly, "what happens if this doesn't work? What happens if we get married and the kids get attached and then everything falls apart?" Joseph was quiet for a moment. "What happens if we don't try and they all stay broken?" he asked finally. Rosa looked at their three children, who were now laughing as Diego tried to show the girls how his father had taught him to whistle. It was the first time she had heard Diego laugh since the funeral. "I'm scared," Rosa admitted. "So am I," Joseph said. "But I'm more scared of watching my daughters forget how to be happy. And you should be scared of watching Diego struggle alone when he doesn't have to." That night, after Joseph and the girls left, Diego was calmer than he had been in days. He ate a small dinner without complaining, took his bath without fighting, and actually asked Rosa to read him a story before bed. "Mom," he said as she tucked him in, "Sky said that when someone you love dies, it's like they become invisible, but they're still with you. Do you think that's true?" Rosa thought about it. "I think maybe it is true. I think Papa would want you to be happy and make friends and learn new things. I think he would like Sky and Luna," Diego said sleepily, "and I think he would like their dad too." Rosa kissed Diego's forehead. "I think you're right." As she turned off the light, Diego said one more thing. "Mom, I don't want to be sad forever. Sky and Luna aren't sad all the time, and they miss their mom just like I miss Papa." That night, Rosa lay in bed thinking about what Diego had said. Her son didn't want to be sad forever. And neither did she, if she was being honest. Maybe Joseph was right. Maybe practical love built on respect and shared purpose was exactly what their broken families needed to heal. Maybe it was time to stop being scared of what everyone else thought and start thinking about what would actually make their children whole again. The next morning, Rosa called Joseph. "I've made my decision," she said when he answered. "And?" Rosa took a deep breath. "Your son needs a father and my daughters need a mother," she said, echoing his words from the carnival. "When do we start?" Rosa and Joseph got married on a crisp November morning in the small courthouse in Copper Ridge. There were no white dresses, no flowers, no big reception with dancing and cake. Just two practical people making a practical decision for the sake of three children who needed them to be strong. Diego wore his best shirt and tie, the same outfit he had worn to his father's funeral. Sky and Luna wore matching blue dresses that Joseph's grandmother had made for them. The girls carried small bouquets of desert wildflowers, and Diego proudly held the simple gold rings they had chosen together. The only guests were Joseph's grandmother, Maria, and Rosa's mother, Elena, who had driven down from Phoenix despite her strong disapproval of the whole arrangement. "If you're determined to do this crazy thing," Elena had told Rosa the night before, "then at least I'll be there to witness it. But don't expect me to pretend I think it's a good idea." Judge Williams, a kind older man who had known Carlos, kept the ceremony short and simple. When he asked if they promised to honor and respect each other, Rosa and Joseph looked directly into each other's eyes and said yes. When he pronounced them husband and wife, they shook hands solemnly instead of kissing. "Well," the judge said with a smile, "that was certainly the most practical wedding ceremony I've ever performed. I hope it works out for all of you." After the ceremony, they drove to Joseph's house on the reservation, which was now Rosa and Diego's home too. It was bigger than Rosa's old place, with 3 bedrooms and a large kitchen that opened onto a living room with a stone fireplace. Joseph had spent weeks preparing for their arrival. He had cleared out half of his bedroom for Rosa's things and set up a small bed in the corner for her privacy. The second bedroom had been converted into a shared space for all 3 children, with bunk beds and a small desk by the window. "This is our room now?" Diego asked, looking around in wonder. "Yep," Luna said, bouncing on one of the beds. "You can have the bottom bunk if you want, and Sky and I will share the top one." "We have to share everything now," Sky added matter-of-factly. "Clothes and toys and books." Papa explained it to us. Rosa watched her son explore his new space and felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. This was really happening. They were really a family now, at least on paper. That first week was harder than anyone had expected. Diego, who had been excited about living with Sky and Luna, suddenly became clingy and tearful. He followed Rosa around the house constantly and threw tantrums when she tried to go to the store without him. "He's scared you're going to disappear too," Joseph explained gently after Diego had another meltdown at bedtime. Moving to a new house, having a new father figure, it's a lot of change for a little boy who's already lost so much. Luna and Sky were having their own adjustment difficulties. They had been the only children in their father's life for 2 years, and suddenly they had to share his attention. With Diego and Rosa, they became possessive of their father's time and jealous when he helped Diego with homework or read him bedtime stories. Rosa felt caught in the middle, trying to comfort her son while not overstepping with Joseph's daughters. She didn't know how to discipline Luna and Sky when they misbehaved, and she worried that Joseph thought she was being too soft with Diego. The adults were struggling too. Rosa had never lived with a man other than Carlos, and Joseph's quiet presence in the house felt strange and overwhelming. They were polite to each other, almost formal, but there was an awkwardness in the simplest interactions. "Excuse me," Rosa would say when she needed to get past Joseph in the kitchen. "After you," Joseph would reply when they both reached for the coffee pot at the same time. They were like roommates trying very hard not to bother each other, which made the house feel tense and unnatural. 3 weeks into the marriage, Rosa was ready to admit defeat. She was lying in her small bed in the corner of Joseph's room, listening to Diego cry in the next room because he missed his old house and his old bedroom. Sky and Luna were arguing about whose turn it was to feed their pet goldfish. Joseph was on the couch, probably wondering what he had gotten himself into. Rosa got up and walked to the living room, where Joseph was indeed sitting in the dark, staring at the dying embers in the fireplace. "This isn't working," Rosa said quietly, sitting down in the chair across from him. Joseph looked up at her. "Are you asking for a divorce?" Rosa thought about it. "I don't know, maybe. The kids are miserable. We're miserable. Maybe everyone was right and this was a terrible idea." Joseph was quiet for a long moment. "Or maybe we're trying too hard to be perfect instead of just being real." "What do you mean?" Joseph stood up and poked at the fire, sending sparks up the chimney. "We're acting like strangers living in the same house instead of partners trying to build something together. The kids can feel that tension. They don't know how to act when we don't know how to act." Rosa considered this. "So what do? "We stop being so polite," Joseph said simply. "We stop tiptoeing around each other. We start acting like we're on the same team." The next morning, Joseph made breakfast for everyone, pancakes with faces made out of chocolate chips. Instead of sitting at opposite ends of the table like they usually did, he and Rosa sat next to each other. When Diego spilled syrup on his shirt, Joseph helped clean him up without asking Rosa's permission first. When Luna complained that her pancake face wasn't smiling, Rosa fixed it without looking to Joseph for approval. Small changes, but the children noticed. The atmosphere in the house felt lighter, more natural. That afternoon, Diego had another meltdown about missing his old house. Instead of Rosa handling it alone like she usually did, Joseph sat down on the floor next to Diego. "You know what I missed most when we moved to this house?" Joseph asked Diego. "What?" Diego sniffled. "The way the morning light came through the windows in our old place. It was different here, and for months every morning felt wrong." "Yeah," Diego said, suddenly animated. "The light in my old room was yellow, but the light here is white. It doesn't feel like home." "Want to know what helped me?" Joseph asked. Diego nodded. "I put one thing from the old house in each room of the new house. A picture here, a blanket there. Pretty soon the new house started feeling like home too, because pieces of the old home were everywhere." That evening, Rosa and Joseph helped Diego choose special items from his old life to place around their new house. His father's work gloves went on the kitchen windowsill. A photo of Carlos went on Diego's bedside table. His favorite stuffed animal from when he was little went on the living room couch. Luna and Sky watched this process with interest, then asked if they could do the same thing with memories of their mother. Soon the house was filled with small reminders of all the love that had come before. Not shrines to the past, but gentle acknowledgments that their previous lives were part of their current story. By December, they had settled into routines that felt more natural. Joseph would make coffee in the morning while Rosa packed lunches. Rosa would help all three children with homework, while Joseph prepared dinner. They took turns reading bedtime stories and dealing with nighttime fears. They weren't a traditional family, but they were becoming a functional one. The children had stopped competing for attention and started working together. Diego taught the girls how to draw cars and trucks. Luna taught Diego how to braid friendship bracelets. Sky helped everyone with math homework. Rosa and Joseph had developed an easy partnership based on mutual respect and shared responsibilities. They weren't romantic, but they were friends. They made decisions together, supported each other's parenting choices, and covered for each other when one of them had a difficult day. On Christmas Eve, as they sat around their fireplace watching the three children play a board game together, Rosa realized something had shifted. The house felt like home. The children felt like siblings. She and Joseph felt like partners who had chosen each other deliberately and were making it work through effort and commitment, rather than passion and luck. "No regrets?" Joseph asked quietly, following her gaze toward the children. Rosa watched Diego help Luna count her game pieces while Sky dealt out new cards. Her son looked confident, secure, and genuinely happy for the first time since his father's death. "No regrets," she said, and meant it. It wasn't the marriage she had imagined when she was young and dreaming of romance, but it was the marriage she needed now, solid, practical, and built around the understanding that love takes many forms. And sometimes the most profound form is the decision to show up for each other, day after day, because you've promised to build something good together. 2 years later, Rosa stood at the edge of the school auditorium watching her family prepare for the annual Cultural Heritage Night. Diego, now 8 years old and confident in ways that still amazed her, was helping Sky arrange a display about Apache traditions. Luna was carefully writing labels for Rosa's contribution, a table showcasing Mexican folk art and traditional recipes. "Mom, does this look right?" Diego called out, holding up a small dream catcher he had made under Sky's patient guidance. His pronunciation of Apache words had improved dramatically over the past year, and he wore his knowledge of both cultures with obvious pride. "It looks perfect, mi amor," Rosa replied, using the Spanish endearment that Diego now translated automatically for his sisters. "Sky taught you well." Sky, now 12 and growing tall like her father, beamed at the compliment. She had become Diego's mentor in all things related to Apache culture, while he had taught her Spanish phrases and helped her understand Mexican traditions that were now part of their shared family identity. Luna, 10 years old and artistic like her mother had been, was sketching in a notebook while she worked. She had recently started calling Rosa Mama Rosa without being asked, and the name had stuck. Diego called Joseph Papa Joe, a compromise that honored his birth father while acknowledging his new one. Joseph appeared beside Rosa, carrying a box of materials for their display. At 45, he looked younger and more relaxed than he had when they first met. The lines of grief around his eyes had softened into something more peaceful. "Remember when you thought this was all crazy?" he asked quietly, nodding toward their children working together. Rosa smiled. "I still think it's crazy. But it's the good kind of crazy." Their unconventional marriage had surprised everyone, including themselves, by actually working. Not because they had fallen madly in love, though they had developed a deep affection and respect for each other, but because they had built something solid and sustainable, based on shared values and commitment to their children's well-being. The transformation in all three children had been remarkable to watch. Diego had grown from an angry, grief-stricken little boy into a confident child who could speak 2 languages, ride horses, and help his younger sister with homework. He still missed his father and always would, but Carlos's death was no longer the defining tragedy of his life. Instead, it was part of his story, sad but not devastating, a loss balanced by gains he couldn't have imagined. Sky had blossomed from a too-serious child carrying adult responsibilities into a regular preteen who gossiped with friends, complained about chores, and dreamed of becoming a veterinarian. She still helped take care of her family, but now it felt like choice rather than necessity. Luna had found her voice in ways that amazed everyone. Once the quiet baby of the family, she had become the social connector, the one who organized family game nights and insisted they celebrate every small achievement. Her nightmares about losing her mother had stopped completely about 6 months after Rosa joined the family. 5 minutes until we open the doors, announced Mrs. Garcia, the school principal who had been so understanding during Diego's difficult period. Rosa looked around at their display and felt proud of what they had created together. Photos of both Carlos and Joseph's wife, Anna, were prominently featured, not as shrines to the past, but as honored family members whose influence continued to shape their lives. There were pictures of the children learning traditional dances, cooking family recipes, and participating in both Apache ceremonies and Mexican celebrations. "We look like a real family," Luna observed, studying a recent photo of all 5 of them at the reservation summer festival. "We are a real family," Sky said matter-of-factly. "Just because we started different doesn't mean we're not real." Diego nodded seriously. "Besides, lots of families are different. Tommy Martinez has 2 moms and Jessica Chen lives with her grandparents. There's no rule that says families have to look the same." Rosa exchanged a glance with Joseph. Their children's matter-of-fact acceptance of their blended family had helped them navigate the occasional raised eyebrows and whispered comments from other adults. When you're 8, 10, and 12 years old and genuinely happy, other people's opinions about your family structure seem irrelevant. The doors opened and parents began streaming into the auditorium. Rosa spotted her mother, Elena, who had driven down from Phoenix for the event. Elena's attitude toward the marriage had slowly shifted from disapproval to grudging acceptance to something that might actually be pride. She had watched Diego flourish under Joseph's gentle guidance and seen Rosa regain confidence and peace of mind. "Abuela Elena," Diego called out, running to greet his grandmother with Luna and Sky close behind. All 3 children now called Elena their grandmother, and she had finally stopped correcting them. "Look what we made together," Luna said, pulling Elena toward their display. "Mama Rosa taught us how to make pan dulce, and Papa Joe showed us how to weave grass baskets." Elena examined their work carefully. "This is beautiful, mijos. You should be proud of your heritage, both sides of it." Rosa felt tears in her eyes. It had taken time, but Elena had come to understand that Diego hadn't lost his Mexican identity by gaining Apache traditions. Instead, he had become richer, more complex, more confident in who he was and where he came from. Joseph's grandmother, Maria, arrived with several other elders from the reservation. At 78, she moved slowly, but still insisted on examining every detail of their display. She had been skeptical of the marriage at first, worried that Joseph was rushing into something for the wrong reasons, but watching her granddaughters thrive under Rosa's care had convinced her that sometimes unconventional choices lead to beautiful outcomes. "You have raised strong children," Maria told Rosa in her careful English. "They know who they are and where they belong. That is the most important thing." As the evening progressed, Rosa watched parents and children move from display to display, learning about different cultures and traditions. Several other families were non-traditional too. Single parents, grandparents raising grandchildren, blended families from divorce and remarriage. She realized that their arrangement, while unusual, wasn't unique in its core challenge of creating stability and love from complicated circumstances. "Mrs. Martinez Crow Feather," called Mrs. Garcia, using the hyphenated name Rosa had chosen to honor both her heritage and her new family. "Could you and your family come to the front? We'd like you to share how you've blended your cultural traditions." Rosa looked at Joseph nervously. Public speaking had never been her strength. "We'll do it together," Joseph said quietly, taking her hand for the first time in public. They walked to the front of the auditorium with their 3 children, and Rosa was struck by how natural it felt to stand together as a family unit. Joseph spoke about Apache traditions and the importance of community support during difficult times. Rosa talked about Mexican celebrations and the way food and music connect generations, but it was the children who stole the show. "The best part about having 2 cultures," Diego announced to the assembled crowd, is that we get twice as many holidays and twice as much good food." The audience laughed and Sky stepped forward. "But really," she said seriously, "what we learned is that different doesn't mean wrong. It just means there are more ways to love your family and honor your ancestors." Luna nodded and added, "And when sad things happen, like when parents die, you can build new kinds of families that help everyone heal together." Rosa felt Joseph squeeze her hand gently. Their children had understood something that many adults struggled with, that love and family could be intentionally created, carefully nurtured, and deeply meaningful even when they didn't follow traditional patterns. After the presentation, as they cleaned up their display, Elena approached Rosa. "Miga," she said quietly, "I owe you an apology. When you first told me about this arrangement, I thought you were settling for less than you deserved. I was wrong. You weren't settling. You were choosing something harder and better than what most people are brave enough to attempt." Rosa hugged her mother. "I was scared too, Mom. I still can't believe it worked out so well." "It worked out because you both put the children first," Elena said, watching Joseph help Diego carefully pack away the dream catchers. "And because you were willing to grow into something new instead of trying to recreate what you'd lost." As they drove home that evening, the children chattering excitedly in the back seat about the evening's success, Rosa reflected on how far they had all come. She and Joseph had created something unprecedented in their experience. A marriage based on mutual respect, shared goals, and the understanding that sometimes the most profound love grows slowly and deliberately, rather than striking like lightning. "Mom," Diego said from the back seat, "can we have pancakes tomorrow morning? The kind Papa Joe makes with the smiley faces? And can we work on our friendship bracelets after breakfast?" Luna added, "I want to finish the one I'm making for Abuela Elena." "And I need help with my math homework," Sky said. "The new fractions are really hard." Rosa smiled, listening to their children, and they were all their children now, completely and without reservation, plan their Saturday morning together. This was what healing looked like.